Lagos never sleeps, and neither does Amelie. At just 25, she's already used to the rhythm of exhaustion, long hospital shifts, late-night bus rides, and the hum of city lights that never seem to fade. She's a nurse, the kind of woman who carries other people's pain and still finds a way to smile. But inside, she's tired, not just from work, but from the kind of life that never seems fair. At home, things are even heavier. Her younger sister, Tari, is the golden child, their mother's favorite. Tari doesn't work. She spends her nights at clubs, posting photos online, bragging about a life she can't afford. When the money runs out, she runs to Mama Grace, who always finds a way to rescue her. Amelie, on the other hand, works 2 shifts just to pay her rent and keep food on the table. Yet no matter how much she does, it's never enough. Mama Grace always finds a way to remind her. Family comes first, especially your sister. Those words sting every time, like a small cut that never heals. Sometimes, when Amelie gets home late and hears Tari laughing in the next room, she wonders if being the responsible one is really worth it. She loves her family, but deep down, she's starting to see that love shouldn't mean losing yourself. And though she doesn't know it yet, this quiet frustration is the spark that will soon change her life forever. The night had been long at the hospital. Amelie's feet ached, her uniform smelled faintly of disinfectant, and all she wanted was to collapse on her small bed and sleep. But the moment she opened the front door, she knew peace wouldn't be waiting for her. Tari's loud sobs filled the room, echoing through the small apartment. Mascara ran down her cheeks as she clutched her phone dramatically, wailing like the world had ended. Mama Grace was pacing the floor, her face tight with worry. The air felt thick, like a storm was about to break. Before Amelie could even set her bag down, her mother said sharply, "Your sister's landlord is threatening to kick her out. You will pay her rent." Amelie blinked, thinking she'd heard wrong. "Mama, I barely have enough for my own bills this month," she said softly, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "I sent money last week for food and—" Her mother cut her off, eyes blazing. "Don't start. You have a good job. Your sister has been through a lot. Family comes first, or have you forgotten?" Tari sniffled loudly from the couch, pretending to wipe her tears. "Amelie, please, just this once," she said in that fake sweet tone she always used when she wanted something. "I swear I'll pay you back." Amelie's chest tightened. She'd heard that promise too many times. Rent, phone bills, club outfits, even fake business ideas. She'd covered them all while Tari spent her days doing nothing. "Mama, I can't," Amelie whispered. "I'm trying to save. I've been working overtime just to stay afloat." That's when it happened. Mama Grace turned on her like fire catching dry grass. "Then sleep on the street," she snapped, her voice shaking with anger. "Because I'll never let you stay under this roof if you refuse your blood." Amelie froze. The words hit her harder than any slap could. For a second, she thought her mother might take them back, say it was just anger talking. But Mama Grace's face stayed cold and unbending. Tari looked down, pretending to cry harder, but Amelie could see the faint smirk tugging at her lips. It was a performance, and everyone knew their roles. Amelie felt her throat tighten. She wanted to remind her mother of everything she'd done, the school fees she helped pay, the groceries she bought, the nights she came home so tired she cried quietly in the dark. But she knew it wouldn't matter. In her mother's eyes, love was measured by what she gave to Tari, not by how hard she worked to keep them all afloat. She walked to her room in silence, her heart pounding. The tears came only when she closed the door behind her. That night, for the first time, Amelie realized something painful. She wasn't just tired. She was done. The night was quiet, but inside the house, Amelie's heart was loud. Every beat felt heavy, full of things she wanted to say but didn't. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the small suitcase she'd pulled from under it. For a long time, she just looked at it, her hands trembling. Leaving wasn't something she ever imagined doing, not from her own mother's house. But she'd reached her limit. She started folding her clothes slowly, trying not to make a sound. Each shirt, each pair of scrubs carried memories of long shifts and endless sacrifice. The tiny bag filled up fast. It wasn't much, but it was all she owned. Every time the zipper made a small sound, she paused, hoping to hear her mother's voice at the door. A part of her still believed Mama Grace would stop her, tell her to stay, that it was just anger speaking earlier. But when Amelie stepped into the living room, suitcase in hand, Mama Grace was already sitting on the couch, arms crossed, her expression cold and hard. Tari was beside her, fake tears glistening under the dim light. "Mama," Amelie started, her voice breaking. "I can't keep living like this. I've tried my best, but—" Before she could finish, her mother's voice sliced through the air. "Don't come back until you learn respect," she said flatly. Amelie froze. Those words hit deeper than she expected. She looked into her mother's eyes, searching for even a flicker of love or regret. But there was nothing. Only the same disappointment, the same judgment. From the corner of her eye, she saw Tari lower her face, pretending to cry again. But Amelie caught it, that tiny smirk playing at the edge of her lips. Tari had won. Again, Amelie swallowed hard, fighting the lump in her throat. "Okay," she said quietly. It was the only word she could manage without breaking down. She lifted her small bag, walked to the door, and paused for one last time. Maybe, just maybe, Mama Grace would call her name. Maybe she'd say, "Come back inside, my child." But silence. Amelie stepped out into the cool Lagos night. The streetlights flickered above her as she dragged her bag along the rough pavement. Her chest ached, but her steps were steady. For the first time, she wasn't walking to the hospital for work. She was walking away from everything that had broken her. She found a small room near the hospital, cramped, with peeling walls and a noisy fan. It wasn't much, but it was hers. That night, she lay on the thin mattress staring at the ceiling, feeling the sting of her mother's words over and over again. Still, somewhere deep inside the pain, a new feeling began to grow, quiet but strong. Freedom. The first few months on her own were the hardest. Amelie's small rented room near the hospital barely had space for her thing. The walls were thin, and the ceiling fan rattled so loud she sometimes had to turn it off just to sleep. But she told herself it was still better than living where she wasn't wanted. Every morning, she woke up before dawn, tied her hair back, and went straight into her long shifts, smiling at patients even when her legs felt like they'd give out. Money was tight. After paying rent and transport, there was barely anything left for food. Some nights, she ate bread and tea for dinner. But Amelie refused to complain. She had made her choice, and she was determined to make it work. One night after work, scrolling through her old phone, she stumbled on a video about saving money and small business ideas. Something in her lit up. She'd always been good at managing things, patience, schedules, even chaos. Maybe she could learn how to manage money too. That same night, she signed up for free online finance courses. She studied during her breaks and late at night, eyes burning from the screen but her mind hungry to learn more. At the hospital, one of her colleagues, Kwesi, started noticing her energy. While others complained about long shifts, Amelie used her spare minutes to take notes or read articles. One afternoon during lunch, Kwesi asked, "Amelie, what are you always studying?" She smiled shyly. "Finance. I want to understand how businesses work. Maybe one day, I'll start something of my own." Kwesi was impressed. "You're serious about this, aren't you? I know someone, an investor friend who loves helping small startups. Maybe you should talk to him." At first, Amelie hesitated. The idea of running a business felt too big, too far from her simple world. But after a week, she decided to take a chance. She met the investor, a kind middle-aged man who listened carefully as she explained her idea. A private home care service that sends trained nurses to care for elderly or sick people in their homes. The man nodded thoughtfully. "It's a good idea," he said, "and you seem passionate. I'll help you get started." That one meeting changed everything. Months passed like a whirlwind. Amelie worked harder than ever, splitting her time between her hospital job and setting up her new business, Silvercare Health Services. She printed flyers, built a small team, and visited clients personally. Word spread quickly. Her kindness, professionalism, and honesty won people over. Within a year, Silvercare began to thrive. She was finally earning enough to move into a better apartment, eat proper meals, and even save money. Every time she walked into her office, small but filled with purpose, she couldn't help but smile. She had built this life from nothing but determination, heartbreak, and a dream she refused to give up on. A year later, life looked completely different for Amelie. The girl who once cried alone in a tiny room now ran one of the fastest-growing home care agencies in Lagos. Silvercare Health Services had become her pride, a name people trusted. What started with just her and 2 nurses had now grown into a team of over 20, working across the city. Every week, new clients called, praising the care and kindness her nurses provided. Amelie didn't just build a business. She built a family that valued her. With success came small joys she'd never known before. She rented a bright, cozy apartment in Surulere, with real curtains, a proper kitchen, and a view of the city lights. For the first time, she could afford to decorate her space with flowers and framed quotes that reminded her how far she'd come. She even bought a small second-hand car. Every time she drove to work, she caught herself smiling at the reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked confident, peaceful even. Amelie stopped calling home months ago. Not out of hate, but out of peace. She needed the quiet. No guilt trips, no emotional blackmail, no constant reminders that she wasn't enough. She had learned to enjoy her own company, to fill her silence with gratitude instead of pain. Then one afternoon, everything changed with a single phone call. Her phone rang just as she was reviewing new nurse applications. When she saw the name Mama Grace flash on her screen, her hand froze. For a moment, she considered ignoring it. But her heart, no matter how guarded, still softened when she thought of her mother. She took a deep breath and answered, "Mama." The voice on the other end was softer than she remembered. "Emily, my child," Mama Grace said, her tone trembling a little. "It's been so long. How are you?" Emily leaned back in her chair, unsure how to respond. "I'm fine, Mama. Busy, but fine." There was a long pause. Then her mother sighed deeply. "Emily, we need your help. It's your sister, Tari. She's in trouble again." The words hung in the air like smoke. Emily closed her eyes. It felt like déjà vu, the same sentence that used to ruin her nights. "What happened?" she asked quietly. Mama Grace hesitated before speaking. "It's bad this time. Her landlord, her business partner, everything's falling apart. Please, my daughter, she needs you." Emily's chest tightened. She had built her whole new life trying to escape this exact moment. But here it was again, her mother's voice, soft and desperate, asking her to save Tari one more time. For the first time in years, Emily didn't answer right away. She simply sat there in silence, staring at the framed quote on her wall that read, "Sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do." Mama Grace's voice cracked through the phone, heavy with panic. "Emily, please, your sister is in serious trouble," she said, almost whispering between shaky breaths. Emily could hear the worry, the same desperate tone her mother used years ago, only this time it sounded weaker. "What happened?" Emily asked, her voice calm but cautious. Mama Grace sighed deeply, as if the words themselves were too heavy to speak. "Tari got into a business deal, something with her friend. They were selling imported hair products. But it turns out she took the money and didn't deliver anything. Now the man is threatening to call the police. He says she scammed him, that she owes him millions of naira." Emily closed her eyes and leaned back in her chair. It wasn't surprise she felt. It was exhaustion. Tari's life had always been one drama after another. But this was different. Jail wasn't a small threat. "She could go to jail, Emily," Mama Grace continued, her voice breaking. "Please, I'm begging you. Pay her rent, pay her debts, whatever it takes. You're the only one who can save her." There was a long silence on the line. Emily didn't answer immediately. She looked around her office, the polished desk, the framed certificates, the team photos on the wall. Everything around her was a reminder of what she had built from nothing. Every late night, every tear, every sacrifice had brought her here. And now, the same people who once threw her out were asking for help. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "Mama," she said slowly, "do you remember when you told me to sleep on the street?" On the other end, there was silence. She could hear her mother breathing, soft, uneven, like the weight of those words had just landed after all these years. "I was angry, my child," Mama Grace said finally, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean it. I was just trying to protect your sister. You know how mothers are." Emily's heart tightened. She'd dreamed of hearing her mother admit she was wrong. But now that it was happening, it didn't bring her peace. It just reminded her how deeply those words had cut. She took a deep breath. "You told me to sleep on the street because I refused to pay her rent," she said quietly. "Now you're asking me to do it again, just in a bigger way." Mama Grace began to cry softly. "Please, Emily, she'll go to jail. You're her sister. You're all she has." Emily looked out the window, watching the Lagos traffic move below like a restless river. For years, she'd been the one saving everyone else. But maybe it was time for them to face the consequences of their choices. For the first time, she wasn't the helpless one in the story. She held the power. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to use it. For a long moment, Emily didn't say anything. She could hear her mother sniffling softly through the phone, begging her to understand. Every word pulled at her heart, but she had learned that guilt was her family's favorite weapon. She had carried their burdens for too long, and this time, she wasn't going to let them crush her again. "Mama," she said finally, her tone calm and steady, "if she has nowhere to go, then she can sleep on the same street you sent me to." There was complete silence. The line went so quiet that Emily could hear her own heartbeat. "Mama," she said after a few seconds, though she knew the silence wasn't from bad reception. It was shock. For once, the power had shifted. Then, a new voice exploded through the phone. "So this is who you've become?" Tari shouted, her voice sharp and filled with anger. "After everything Mama did for you, you think you're better than us now? You're heartless, Emily. Money has turned you cold." Emily held the phone away for a second, closing her eyes. She could almost see Tari, dramatic as ever, crocodile tears running down her face, twisting the story to make herself the victim. It was the same act she'd seen her sister play her whole life. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but cut like glass. "No, Tari," she said quietly. "I'm not heartless. I just learned what love really costs, and I'm done paying the price for everyone else's mistakes." Tari gasped on the other end, but Emily didn't wait to hear what came next. She ended the call and placed the phone on her desk, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from release. The room was completely still. For the first time in years, she felt light. No more guilt. No more pressure to fix what wasn't hers to fix. The The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was peaceful. She sat there for a while, staring out the window at the city lights of Lagos flickering in the distance. Those same streets she once walked in tears were now filled with people she employed, families she helped, and lives she touched through her work. She had built something beautiful from the same pain that once broke her. Emily smiled faintly. She wasn't the unwanted child anymore. She wasn't the one left behind. She was a woman who had finally learned that love without respect isn't love at all. That night, as she turned off her office lights and stepped out into the cool night air, she whispered to herself, "I'm free." And for the first time in her life, she truly meant it. Weeks passed quietly after that final phone call. Emily threw herself into work, focusing on what she could control, her business, her team, and the people they served. Silvercare Health Services was growing faster than she'd ever imagined. Her nurses were now working across Lagos, providing care in hospitals, private homes, and even community centers. Every week brought new contracts, new patients, and new opportunities. One morning, Emily woke up to dozens of missed calls and messages. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Friends, colleagues, even old classmates were reaching out. Confused, she scrolled through her messages until she saw it. A photo of her face on the front page of a national newspaper. The headline read, "Young Nurse Wins Government Contract to Lead Lagos Home Care Program." She blinked in disbelief. Her company, Silvercare, had been chosen as the lead provider for a new government health initiative. The article praised her for creating jobs for young nurses and providing affordable care for the elderly. They called her a symbol of hope for Nigerian women in healthcare. Emily sat down slowly, the newspaper photo staring back at her. She smiled to herself, not out of pride but gratitude. Every hardship, every sleepless night, every tear had brought her here. She thought about her mother for a brief second, but quickly pushed the thought away. Across town, Mama Grace was sitting outside her small house when a neighbor walked up to her, holding the same newspaper. "Mama Grace, see your daughter, oh," the woman said excitedly, handing her the paper. "Your Emily is in the news. Big woman now. God has really blessed her." One by one, neighbors came by, smiling and congratulating. Some even clapped her on the back. "You raised a strong one, Mama Grace," they said. "You must be so proud." Mama Grace forced a smile, nodding as she held the paper tightly. "Yes, I am," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's done well." But as soon as the neighbors left, the smile faded. She stared at her daughter's photo, Emily in a sharp navy suit, her natural hair pulled back neatly, her eyes confident but kind. It hit her like a wave. The same daughter she called disrespectful. The same one she sent away without a second thought. Her hands trembled slightly as she whispered to herself, "That's the daughter I threw away." Tears welled in her eyes, and she quickly wiped them before anyone could see. Around her, the street buzzed with laughter and gossip, but Mama Grace barely heard it. All she could think about was the moment she told her only hard-working child to sleep on the street, and how, somehow, that child had built an empire from the pain she left behind. For the first time in her life, Mama Grace didn't feel proud. She felt sorry, truly sorry. The rain that night came down hard, pounding against the glass walls of Emily's office. Most of her staff had already gone home, but she stayed behind to finish some reports. The city outside was blurred with water and headlights, a familiar Lagos storm wrapping the night in gray. She was about to shut down her computer when the receptionist's voice came through the intercom. "Ma, there's an elderly woman here asking for you," the receptionist said. "She says her name is Mama Grace." Emily froze. For a moment, she thought she misheard. Her heartbeat quickened, and her hands went cold. She hadn't seen her mother since that last painful call months ago. Slowly, she stood up, walked to the reception area, and there she was, Mama Grace. She looked smaller than Emily remembered. Her clothes were drenched, her scarf clung to her wet hair, and her hands trembled from the cold. When their eyes met, Mama Grace's lips quivered. "Emily," she said softly, her voice breaking. Emily rushed to her side, helping her sit down. "Mama, you're soaked. Why didn't you call first?" she asked, gently wrapping her mother in a towel one of the staff brought. For a while, neither of them spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence. Then Mama Grace began to cry. Not the angry, defensive tears Emily grew up hearing, but the quiet, broken kind that come from deep regret. "My child," she said between sobs, "I failed you. I was blind, foolish, and unfair. I let my love for Tari blind me. I hurt you, and I can never take that back." Emily listened quietly, her heart softening. Seeing her mother cry like that didn't bring satisfaction, only sadness. She had spent years trying to earn this apology, and now that it had finally come, she realized she didn't need it to move on. "Mama," she said gently, "I forgave you long ago. I just stopped waiting for your approval." Mama Grace looked up, tears mixing with the rain still dripping from her face. "You forgave me?" she whispered, almost in disbelief. Emily smiled faintly. Yes, because holding on to anger would have kept me stuck. I had to let it go so I could breathe again. She stood up, walked to her drawer, and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a bundle of cash. She placed it gently in her mother's hand. This isn't out of duty, she said softly. It's because I still care. I want you to be okay. Mama Grace stared at the envelope, then at her daughter, her eyes full of shame and gratitude. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out, just tears. Emily reached over and hugged her. It wasn't the warm reunion of old dreams, but it was real. For the first time in years, they sat together in silence. Two women, both scarred by choices, both learning that forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can make peace with it. A few months later, Emily got a message she didn't expect. It was from Tari. The tone was different this time. No attitude, no pride. Just desperation. Please, Emily, the message read. I need a job. I've lost everything. I want to start over. For a while, Emily just stared at the screen. She had imagined this moment before, wondering what she'd say if her sister ever came back. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to let karma finish its work. But another part, the softer part that still remembered the girl who used to braid her hair when they were little, couldn't do that. The next day, she called Tari and invited her to the Silvercare office. When Tari arrived, she looked nothing like the flashy, confident girl she once was. Her face was pale, her clothes simple. She looked tired, humbled. Emily listened as she explained everything. The debt, the embarrassment, the fake friends who disappeared when the money ran out. When she finished, Emily said quietly, I'll give you a job, but you'll work like everyone else. No shortcuts, no special treatment. If you're serious about changing, this is your chance. Tari nodded quickly, tears in her eyes. I'll do anything, she whispered. Weeks later, Silvercare was thriving more than ever. Emily's story had spread across Nigeria, the nurse who turned pain into purpose. One evening, a national TV station aired a feature about her journey and the women she was empowering through her company. In her small living room, Mama Grace watched with watery eyes as Emily spoke confidently on stage, accepting an award. The camera zoomed in on her face as her voice played softly. They once told me to sleep on the street. Now I build homes for others who had nowhere to go.